There are distinct kinds of mystical power in Dungeons & Dragons. The clear division between arcane and the divine, the innate power of those born with some connection through their ancestry or some incident that forever changed them. Then there are those with the ability to study and learn the very complex methods and schools of magic. But today, we're going to be talking about another kind of power, the pacts and patrons of warlocks. If you've ever sat across from a warlock in a dimly lit tavern table and watched the faint glow of otherworldly power flicker behind their eyes, you know the feeling. There's something different about them, not just the spells they hurl, but the way they carry themselves, as if part of them no longer fully belongs to this world. That difference is no accident. It's the mark of a pact, a metaphysical bond forged in blood, soul, or ritual that links a mortal to something far greater and far more dangerous than any mortal wizard would ever mess around with. If there is a line dividing warlocks from cultists, it's a very fine one, and most wizards don't recognize or acknowledge that there even is a line. I happen to think it's just a matter of whether or not the warlock has a bunch of followers that they rope into their madness, but wizards would debate me on that. Wizards are taught that the only avenue to power is through dedication and very hard work, be it devotion to study or devotion of belief. There are no shortcuts, none that are safe or acceptable. They look at sorcerers as those pretty much cursed or afflicted, not gifted. And there is some degree of sympathy for their situation. They didn't choose to be born the way they are. Their hardship is very real. They are ostracized, blamed, shunned, banished, often with no family and few real friends. Wizards understand this. They grow up separated by their own gift of intelligence, which also tends to isolate them. And they know the power the sorcerer is forced to contend with from such a young age. It's all they ever know, and shuts so many other things out of their life. They empathize with them. But warlocks are a different story altogether. Wizards may call it the quick path, reckless, the dark side, the fool's reward, the lure of ambition into madness. First rules of wizardry: if you can't control it, don't invoke it. If you can't direct it, don't unleash it. And if you don't know the risk, never summon it. Warlocks break all of those rules. So, settle back, grab yourself a tasty beverage. It's time to get deeply nerdy. Warlock pact bonds are far more than simple agreements for power. They are binding supernatural contracts or rituals that tie a mortal's fate to a powerful extraplanar or ancient entity. These relationships run the full spectrum, from mutual service and careful negotiation to absolute enslavement, and they often involve the literal trade of one's life in exchange for arcane power. The nature of those bonds is never casual. Once formed, they are nearly impossible to sever without catastrophic consequences. The letter of the law matters above all else to many of these patrons, especially fiends. Devils in particular are strictly bound by the exact wording of any agreement they make. They will honor the literal terms with sadistic precision, but they delight in twisting the spirit of the contract through malicious interpretation, loopholes, and carefully engineered misfortune. A warlock who bargains carelessly may find themselves fulfilling the letter of their pact while losing everything that truly matters. Pay careful attention to the smallest things in a fiendish contract. You may think that a clause about obeying divine laws has nothing much to do with devils until you fail to understand some local religious tradition and wind up dooming your soul to the nine hells just for drinking wine in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not the devil's goal to make you do evil things to damn you. The hells will turn anyone evil eventually, but lawful and tormented, unjustly condemned souls can burn brightly for a very long time and can make the best kinds of fodder for the eternal blood war. Many pacts revolve around soul bargains. Those who take specific feats such as Disciple of Darkness, Scion of Sorrow, or Thrall to Demon are effectively signing over their afterlife. Upon death, those unfortunate souls are immediately claimed as lower planes petitioners, so lemures for devils, larvae for yugoloths, or manes for demon, and dragged to their patron's realm to serve for eternity. The pact is a down payment on damnation, sure, but the fiends will use their warlocks as pawns on the material plane where possible. This is an excellent way to bypass the cosmic restrictions that keep fiends from going wherever they like, whenever they like, since there's nothing that says they can't be summoned to a world by their own minions. Initiation into these bonds frequently involves a blood oath ritual that creates a permanent, magical mental link between the patron and the warlock. This link allows the entity to track its servant across vast distances and exert subtle influence, or issue direct commands whenever it chooses. Some bonds go even further, becoming physical. The infamous ritual of bonding used by acolytes of the skin replaces the caster's own flesh with the living skin of a demon or devil, eventually resulting in a complete biological symbiosis where the mortal is transformed into an outsider in both body and soul. The fiend lords dominate the landscape of pacts. Asmodeus, the merciless lord of the Nine Hells, draws disciples who crave raw power and the ability to manipulate others through secrets and leverage. Grast, the seductive demon prince who controls at least three whole layers of the abyss, often trades favors with mortals, granting magical might in exchange for future services, or more explicitly intimate and depraved forms of devotion. Orcus, the demon prince of undeath, attracts thralls who revel in the company of the undead and serve as instruments of vengeance. Pazuzu offers aid to those in despair, giving 3 boons, seemingly at no cost, but dooming those who call him a 4th time. Like a demon mockery of the genies who share his domain of the lower realms of air. Belzebul often tempts those facing great danger with the seductive promise of the gift of the Montebank, a special collection of abilities themed around his specialty in deception, illusion, and trickery, which is on brand for the Lord of the Nine Hells, also called the Lord of Lies, similar to Asmodeus in many ways. Some seek out his power out of an obsessive and self-destructive thirst for dominance. Again, there is very little, aside from the title in their character sheet, that distinguishes these warlocks from being cultists, and there is some really convoluted justification as to why these warlocks could ever be of a good alignment. So lately, the rule of cool just seems to be sweep alignment as a character class restriction very firmly under the rug and forget about it. My mission is not to tell you how to run your games, it's to provide inspiration from the rich resources gathered over the decades. So let's go over the various types of warlocks, aside from the fiendish, these packs, and most well-known patrons. Archfey warlocks strike their bargains in moonlit glades or ancient rings of standing stones with the noble and capricious rulers of the Feywild and Fey-adjacent celestial planes, and sometimes the plane of dreams. Archfey are not evil by nature, but they are utterly alien in their sense of humor and justice. A pact with one often feels less like servitude and more like becoming the favorite toy of an immortal child with godlike power. The powers granted by an Archfey pact revolve around the very essence of the Feywild itself. Effortless movement between boundaries, beguiling charm and illusion, and a mischievous mastery over fear and delight. Warlocks of this pact gain the ability to cast Misty Step repeatedly without expending spell slots, a number of times equal to their charisma modifier, teleporting in a swirl of petals, leaves, or shadow as the situation demands. They learn to infuse these steps with additional effects, granting temporary vitality to allies, taunting foes into reckless pursuit, or vanishing into invisibility. At high levels, they slip away as a reaction the instant they are struck, reappearing elsewhere in a puff of Fey magic, and eventually becoming immune to being charmed while reflecting harmful enchantments back upon their attackers. Their magic lets them weave dreams, phantasms, and irresistible compulsions that feel as natural as breathing. Titania, Queen of the Summer Court, may gift her chosen with beauty, charm, freedom of movement, and golden light, but she will demand acts of whimsy that ruin mortal lives for her amusement, turning a rival's wedding into an eternal revel, or spiriting away a child who spoke too boldly. The Queen of Air and Darkness, her cold sister and ruler of the gloaming court, sometimes called the Unseelie or the Winter Fae, offers darker gifts, shadows that cling like living ink, icy fear that freezes the blood, and vengeance delivered through winter's bite. Those who serve her become instruments of eternal twilight, spreading melancholy and beautiful cruelty wherever they wander. Oberon, the Green Lord of Titania's consort, calls to hunters and wild souls who delight in the thrill of the eternal chase through tangled forests that never quite obey natural law. His warlocks move like predators between the trees, leaving trails of blooming nightshade or thunderous hoofbeats in their wake. This power translates surprisingly well to Fey-packed warlocks who track humanoids or supernatural prey through the tangle and shadows of great cities, making them great bounty hunters and assassins. But the thrill of the chase is like an addiction that will inevitably doom them, when age, injury, or overconfidence pits them against a target that they can't defeat. Beyond these great rulers of the Seelie and Unseelie, other mighty archfey extend their reach. Baba Yaga, the mother of witches and the archfey of immense and unpredictable power, travels the plains in her weird chicken-legged hut and flies around spooky forests in a big mortar and pestle. She offers ancient secrets of hag magic, alchemy, and forbidden knowledge to those foolish enough to seek her out. Her bargains are notoriously treacherous. She may aid you one day and devour you the next, depending on her ever-shifting mood. The secret to her is that she only reliably aids those who are genuinely in distress and ask for her help in ignorance of her power. So the mere act of seeking her has already doomed you from the start. Her warlocks often develop a cackling edge to their spells and a fondness for illusionary duplicates and transformative curses which they inflict on others, but often fall victim to themselves eventually. Queen Morwell of the Court of Stars, eternal queen of the Eladrin, rules from a wandering demiplane of starlight and eternal twilight. More celestial in bearing than many fae, she grants graces of luminous beauty, knightly valor, and star-guided destiny. Her chosen often find themselves acting as diplomats or champions in cosmic matters far beyond mortal understanding, their magic shimmering with radiant starfire and protective grace. She has rules, however, against revealing Fey power to mortal beings that could see her warlock minions snatched away to the plane of Arvandor forever. Not such a bad fate, really. It is quite a pleasant place for those who love a twilight sun, natural beauty, endless parties, and mind-altering menus. Even the Raven Queen, who once dwelt in the Feywild before her fall into the Shadowfell, sometimes forges Archfey-style pacts, or Hexblade ones. Through her influence over fate, memory, and death, her warlocks carry a colder, more mournful power. Ravens as spies, veils of forgotten knowledge, and the weight of destiny upon their shoulders. They seek out objects that are haunted or carry supernatural influence, offering them up to their dark queen. They have the absolute best goth decor of all the warlocks, including cabinets full of creepy dolls. I really hate creepy dolls. They give me the heebie-jeebies worse than clowns. Cross an archfey and you will find yourself dancing until your feet bleed, trapped in an endless dream from which only your patron's mercy can release you, or slowly transformed into something no longer quite mortal. A living story wandering the borders between worlds. Fey patrons are alluring, their favour is intoxicating, their beauty is undeniable, but their wrath is horrific, and their attention is never without some poetic consequence. They are beings of fairy tales after all, and those can be grim indeed. Some pacts are not with distant magical beings, but with magical weapons, sentient instruments of death forged in secret. The Hexblade Warlock bonds with a living blade or the entity that created it, becoming a sort of extension of that weapon's hunger. The relationship is often possessive. The blade wants to kill, and the Warlock learns to love the feeling of it. As I mentioned, the Raven Queen is one famous source of these pacts. From her Fortress of Memories She extends her cold influence over fate, death, and forgotten knowledge, granting her chosen the ability to curse enemies with her mark, to strike critically with unnatural ease, and to raise spectral servants from those they slay. Her hexblades often field her gaze upon them in every kill, as though each soul taken adds another raven to her endless flock. Many other hexblades form their pacts directly with the weapons. For a hexblade warlock, magic weapons that possessed sentience, soul harvesting capabilities, or origins in the dark corners of the multiverse are the most suitable candidates for a binding pact. These weapons carry strong personalities that can gradually dominate the wielder completely. We call that artifact possession, and it's a very difficult sort of curse for abjurationist wizards to deal with. The Sword of Cass, a 6-foot-long rippling blade forged by Vecna himself, is arguably the most thematic choice for a dark pact. Thoroughly evil, it once whispered dreams of treachery to Cass, leading him to betray his master, and now exists specifically to destroy Vecna and his cult. Thornblade, an intelligent +3 scimitar, literally bonds with its owner so completely that if the wielder does not touch the weapon for 30 days, it effectively withers away to nothing. When drawn, barbed rosebush-like thorns spring from its emerald-sheening blade and can inject bloodroot poison. Moonblades are intelligent longswords that serve as heirlooms for noble elven families and gain a unique rune and power for each wielder they've had, including the ability to summon an elf shadow, an incorporeal creature the wielder has complete control over. Albruin is an intelligent silvered sword with a mischievous personality known to drag its wielder into unplanned adventures, especially when it senses a nearby mysterious ruin. The Hammer of Gessin, made entirely of coal black iron, gradually transforms its user into a chaotic good fighter, and once the transformation is complete, the character falls under artifact possession and becomes unable to resist a good cause. So it's not all entirely bad, I suppose, but such cases are as rare as hen's teeth when it comes to hexblades. Other blades traffic in the currencies of life and death, such as Soul Drinker, an extremely deadly bastard sword. It drains levels of experience from its victims to infuse its wielder with vital energy, and many have made lesser replicas of it over the years. There is Grip Soul, an eternal razor-edged longsword enruned with glowing green sigils that imprisons its victim's soul in a jet black pearl set in the pommel. There is Afterlife, an unholy greatsword that hungers for life force and allows its wielder once per day to use its tip to cast Death Knell upon a fallen foe. Midnight Blade, another bastard sword, is flesh-grinding and marrow-crushing, but only at night. It is cursed and requires the wielder to draw blood from any medium-sized or larger creature every night, or it turns into a cursed weapon that inflicts clumsiness until a creature is slain to recover its power. There's a dwarven war axe called Carnal Reaver, created by the Duergar. It utterly consumes the physical forms of any creature it slays, so only a true resurrection spell can bring them back to life. Then there's Aerferin Kerim, known as the Art Blade, forged from solid darkness. It emits a sharp buzzing sound when swung and allows the wielder to cast any spell using the sword's power rather than traditional methods. Dark lightsaber. Anyway, Blackjammer's Cutlass is a distinctive weapon fashioned from non-reflective metal, black crystal instead of metal, fitted with silver hilt depicting a sailor being keel-hauled. Over time, many hexblades become as hard and cold and murderous as the weapons they are bonded with. They find no real joy in life aside from killing enemies, and frequently come to violent ends. Among the most transactional and potentially rewarding packs are those with the noble genies of the elemental planes. These powerful, inquisitive, and highly magical outsiders interact more closely with the material plane than almost any other elemental beings. While they often lounge in bored opulence within their own planar palaces, they are frequently drawn into the schemes, ambitions, and conflicts of mortals, making them natural partners for warlocks who understand the art of the bargain. The four primary races of genies each correspond with one of the classical elements, of course. and all are masters of illusion, so their seemingly human-like appearance can rarely be trusted at face value. The genie lord of the endless skies, native to the elemental plane of air and generally benevolent despite their chaotic nature, might grant flight, storm magic, the ability to create food and wine, or even a whirlwind form dwelling in floating cities or opulent pleasure domes. A Tao of deep earth, stocky and muscular, obsesses over wealth and runs vast gem mining operations. They offer unyielding strength, earthly riches, and spells that shape stone and mud, though they view lesser creatures mainly as resources to exploit. And Ifriti brings fire and vengeance from the elemental plane of fire, where they rule the magnificent city of brass. Irritable and often evil, they are ancestral enemies of the Jinn and transform into pillars of flame when wielding walls of fire. Marid, individually the most powerful and capricious of their kind, rules the waves and the subtle art of the wish from the elemental plane of water. And unpredictable as the ocean itself, they hunt for sport on the material plane and capsize ships on a whim, each believing they alone deserve to sit upon the coral throne. Lesser genies also exist and sometimes enter pacts. The Jan, formed of all four elements, are the weakest and most common on the material plane. Nomadic and able to pass for humans, they often form genuine friendships and adventure alongside mortals. Even smaller elemental spirits, known as the Gen, have served as intermediaries and familiars for those who traffic with genie kind. In early ages, the closest mortal equivalent to the Genie Pact was the Sha'ir, a sage who relied on a spirit ally to fetch an arcane and even divine magic from across the planes. Experienced Sha'irs could command Jan or noble genies through careful negotiation, craft genie prisons to enslave their kind, and ultimately bargain for the greatest prize, a true wish from a noble genie, pasha, emir, or caliph. Modern genie warlocks follow this tradition, though their bond is more personal and permanent. The warlock receives a magical vessel, often a lamp, a ring, a bottle, or other container, that serves as both a private sanctuary for short rests and a physical symbol of their living pact. Some genies, especially noble genies, still remember the great empires they once ruled on the material plane. In the Forgotten Realms, the genie lord Kalim established the Kalim Empire and minus 7,800 Dale reckoning, sparking centuries of conflict with dragons, humans, and dwarves. The spirits of Kalim and his rival Menon still haunt the Kalim desert to this day. Echoes of these ancient rivalries and empires colour a genie warlock's bond, lending weight and historical depth to even the simplest request. The genie is rarely cruel, but they are immensely proud. They expect proper respect, clever flattery, and shrewd wit in exchange for their gifts. Failure to meet those expectations can land the warlock in a much darker relationship. Not every warlock serves darkness. Some form pacts with beings of the upper planes. These celestial warlocks can carry a spark of holy fire that many clerics find deeply uncomfortable because it arrives without prayer, without church, and without orthodoxy. Celestial powers capable of forming such pacts are imperial beings, defined by their forthright goodness, valor, and benevolence. Unlike the legalistic and often soul-crushing contracts of the fiends, celestial pacts are frequently presented as a form of proxyhood or vassalage, where the mortal becomes a living vassal through which a higher power directs the force of good into the material plane. This pact is often treated as a solemn oath that becomes part of the warlock's very being. Potential celestial patrons come from several exalted races and governing bodies. The Hebdomad, a ruling council of the seven mounting heavens of Celestia, consists of mighty tome archons such as Zafkael, the Watcher, Razael, the Crusader, and Sealtiel, the Defender. A warlock bound to one of those may focus on order, discipline, and relentless destruction of fiends. The five companions of Elysium, led by Prince Talisid, the Celestial Lion, and including figures like the Duke Lucan and Duchess Callisto, are powerful cardinals who value instinctual goodness and personal freedom over rigid codes. The Court of Stars in Arborea, ruled by Queen Morwell and her consorts, sends chaotic good Eladrin as scouts and wardens to blend beauty, trickery, and fierce combat against wickedness. Azamon, such as Solars, Planetars, and Divas, act as direct stewards and proxies for the gods themselves, with Solars standing among the most powerful good beings, short of divinity. Even fallen celestials like the exiled Solar Malkazid have been known to forge pacts offering their own shadowed graces to those who serve more pragmatic or vengeful ends. The features of the Celestial Pact mirror the energies of these patrons. Healing light and the ability to mend wounds with a touch reflect the life-giving touch of the gods like Pelor or Ilmater. Radiant Soul draws on the pure light of the sun and star-associated beings such as Lathander and Selûne, or the shining shards of light Azamon. Celestial resilience and protective auras echo the awe-inspiring presence of the Archons, while searing vengeance aligns with the noble avengers such as Asuras, who deliver divine punishment to the wicked. As the Warlock grows in power, they may undergo ascendance, a gradual increase in stature that can culminate in physical transformation, turning the mortal into something more akin to an outsider, much like a Lantern Archon rising through their higher forms. A Celestial Pact is rarely cruel, but it does carry expectations. Patrons grant divine gifts such as healing by touch, radiant bursts, or even slaying with a glance. Yet these blessings remain only while the Warlock stays worthy. Should the servant falter, most celestial beings respond first with mercy and guidance, seeking a better path before involving the celestial tribunal. Communication arrives through dream visions, strangely behaving animals, or direct heralds such as a solar avatar or metallic dragons quite often. In time, many celestial warlocks come to see themselves not as servants but as chosen champions, carrying holy fire to the darkest places. The rarest and often most desperate pacts are those struck with entities that have achieved a form of immortality without fully embracing true undeath. These undying warlocks seek not merely power over death, but the defiant refusal of it, bargaining with ancient sentient beings who have transcended mortality through horrific magic or divine intervention. Unlike the more aggressive undead patrons, these entities offer a colder, more measured path to longevity and resilience, often rooted in the shadowed archives of the dead or the negative energy plane. Prominent among them is Jurgle, the Pitiless One, seneschal to the gods of death. He offers pacts grounded in the absolute order of the grave rather than chaotic hunger. His servants, sometimes called Scriveners of Doom, maintain vast archives recording every death and undeath, gaining resilience against life-draining energies and a detached, almost clinical relationship with their own mortality. A transaction, you could say. In contrast, legendary liches like Larlock, the Shadow King of Warlock's Crypt, who lives uncomfortably close to Baldur's Gate, extend fragments of lost Netherese lore through dream visions, commanding courts of lesser liches while casually destroying those who displease them. Armvor, the Undying, demonstrates another route, sustaining himself through a living zombie ritual that leeches vitality from his own bloodline, a template many Undying warlocks follow to consume life force and prolong their existence, hopefully eliminating their bloodline from existence. Other beings blur the line between undying persistence and something darker. In the mists of Ravenloft, entities like Aslan Rex or the spirits known as the Counting Man offer pacts that trade remaining humanity for an eternal ghostly half-life. More abstract powers include Evening Glory, the neutral goddess who teaches that only love can defy death's finality, leading her followers to embrace an unchanging or immortal beauty. Even cosmic threats such as Atropos, the world-born dead, a stillborn godling whose presence causes the dead to rise spontaneously, can serve as distant patrons granting soul-numbing cold or deathly auras. The features granted by an Undying Pact reflect this obsession with endurance. Warlocks gain resistance to disease, the ability to defy death itself should they fall, an unnatural ward that turns aside necrotic energies. As they advance, many undergo a transformation known as ascendance, their bodies shifting towards an outsider-like state, requiring traits reminiscent of the Lich template, immune to poison, sleep, and many mind-affecting spells and things. They may receive dark divine gifts such as a killing with a glance or restoring a semblance of life to others, but only so long as they remain worthy. Patrons communicate through chilling whispers and the sudden silence of graveyards or visions of endless archives. Yet the price is heavy and insidious. Most mortals who cheat death through these pacts find the years of unnatural life weigh upon their mind like lead. Joy fades, memories of past iniquities echo endlessly, and a stagnant madness often sets in, mirroring the unchanging, hollow nature of the immortal entities they serve. The undying patron rarely demands active evil, but in the end, the warlock becomes something that simply refuses to die, until the debt is finally called due. There are no entities more ancient than the great old ones, hence the name. Warlocks who delve into the most ancient ruins or find the most forbidden texts may believe the power they tap into is truly just a dead remnant. But there are some who just don't care what they are doing, and as long as it gives them the power they desperately crave, here the pact becomes truly alien. These warlocks do not bargain with gods or devils so much as they attune their minds to incomprehensible entities from the far realm or the deepest voids between planes, horrors that exist in the very fringes of existence, seeking only to destroy or horribly remake the fabric of reality itself. The patron may not even be fully aware of the warlock, perceiving them as little more than an interesting infection or a fleeting whisper in an endless void. Their thoughts are incomprehensibly vast, their minds older than the universe itself. To them, we're nothing more than an experiment, one among millions, of no consequence if one day they just decided to discard it all, switching our reality off like a game of Sims. Among the most terrifying of these elder evils, as I mentioned at the start, is Pandarum, a sentient singularity from a quasi-reality perpendicular to the Great Wheel. Summoned long ago as a doomsday weapon against the god, it personifies emotionless annihilation. Its god-slaying psyche, now separated, thankfully, from its unstoppable physical form and forever seeking reunion. I've recently made an entire video about Atropos the World-Born Dead drifting through the gulfs of space like a rotting severed head, drawing power from the negative plane to consume worlds and erase them with a gruesome touch. Other cosmic entities also drift in the void, such as Hadar, an evil star. From the far realm comes Father Limerick, a mote of alien thought given flesh, currently entombed in a glacial prison and awaiting the day the sun grows so dark it may turn the world into a frozen paradise of madness. The hulks of Zarethra, 5 stone monoliths that fell from the sky before mortals existed, house malevolent intelligences intent on remaking the planet as a nest for their foul brood. Other immense threats include Leviathan, an impossibly vast sea serpent whose dreaming body has become part of the landscape, and Ragnora, the corrupted mother of monsters, a primal evil source of life gone eternally wrong. Then, as I mentioned, there's Dendar, the night serpent, a primordial so powerful it once consumed the star in the center of realm space, plunging the planet Toril into a frozen age of darkness, where the dreaded aboleths ruled over all life under the ice-covered seas. The entire mythos of H.P. Lovecraft and following authors can easily slot into a D&D campaign. For a warlock, forging a pact with these beings is a path chosen only by the most desperate nihilists or the completely insane. There is no neat contracts or mutual ambitions here, only the pursuit of power that outstrips the limits of mortal magic, often in service to annihilation itself. Some bind themselves through feats such as slave to evil, gaining an aura of unholy power that strengthens as their master's apocalyptic signs intensify, such as The appearance of alien skies, where stars burn in lurid colours and constellations twist into impossible shapes, unravelling both arcane and divine magic. Others might perform eldritch rituals to elevate an ancient shadow dragon to serve abstract entities like the shape-shifting elder elemental god. A genius slime being banished to the distant demiplanes long before other entities arose. They may serve a Drayden, a primordial form of life so massive and ancient it exists mired in our reality, now too rigid and structured for it to move freely through chaos and churning dimensions. The things are living demiplanes, for goodness sakes. These patrons possess malefic properties that shield them and their servants from divine interference, including anathematic secrecy that blocks all godly divination and imperviousness to the divine that renders them immune to the god's magic almost entirely. They are virtually immortal, gifted with vast blind sight and the power to communicate telepathically across great distances, feeling the vibrations under the surface of reality, often using their warlocks as conduits for heretical ideas that erode faith itself. The price is almost always sanity. Many great Old One warlocks begin to hear voices that never cease, feel their thoughts rearranging into geometries mortal minds were never meant to contain, or find themselves haunted by dreams of cosmic unravelling. Ultimately, service to great Old Ones is a campaign-ending force. Even if the warlock is defeated, the mere presence of such an ancient evil leaves permanent scars upon the world, twisting reality in ways that no victory can fully undo. And you could argue that the very weirdness of Dungeons & Dragons is because this has happened time and time again. But there are many great evils still lingering in the deepest waters of many realms. Deep beneath the waves, ancient things stir, fathomless warlocks bind themselves to the crushing pressure and hidden terrors of the ocean's abyss. Their patrons rarely take humanoid form. They're vast, tentacled, and patient, defined by alien goals and the transformative, necrotic or chaotic power they bestow upon their mortal conduits. These entities inhabit the deepest, most inaccessible reaches of the multiverse's oceans, where light never reaches and sanity frays. One of the most primal is the Leviathan, the world serpent of raw chaos, an impossibly large reptilian entity formed from the undiluted residue of creation itself, so massive that its body forms entire seamounts and dormant volcanoes. The Leviathan slumbers in restless dreams of unmaking the world. Warlocks bound to it may channel chaotic surges that daze, fascinate, or confuse their foes, while eerie supernatural storms, tsunamis, and earthquakes follow them as signs of the beast's awakening. Its cults seek to harness this power to sink continents and drown civilizations. Demogorgon, the demon prince, the prince of demons and lord of all that swims in darkness, rules the briny seas and fetid swamps of the gaping maw in the abyss. His two-headed, tentacled form serves as a living template for many fathomless pacts. Those who serve him gain scaly flesh for natural armor and the ability to stretch their arms like living tentacles to grapple enemies, and at higher levels, a rotting touch that decays flesh and bone. Through proxies such as the ancient vampiric Ixatzar-Chitl, Axortl, Demogorgon drains life force and ritual sacrifices to strengthen himself while plotting to drown the surface world and expand his aquatic dominion. Most people don't realize that the bulk of Demogorgon's worshippers are in fact these manta ray-like vampire things that live in the oceans. Mighty krakens also make terrifying patrons, of course. The ghost kraken Narthal, bane of the deeps, continues to haunt the seas long after her death, her evil still not extinguished. These highly intelligent behemoths grant their warlocks improved grab, constriction, clouds of jet ink for concealment, and command over winds, weather, and sea life. Obsessed with territorial supremacy, they use surface-dwelling servants to help them drag ships to watery graves and eliminate their own rivals. Deeper still lurks Yethand, the neutral evil god of the evil depths and master of the last gasping breath. His lightless trenches teem with sharks and octopi, aboleths, and sahuagin. Warlocks who serve him often develop a distant watery stare and quick brooding temper. spreading fear of drowning and the chill of the sunless abyss while feeding submerged temples with the life force of surface dwellers. Other entities include the Wastreliths, horrific water lords with needle teeth and fish-like faces who command aquatic creatures through sheer intimidation. These fiends grant the power to spew boiling water and seize control of water elementals, using mortal servants to expand their undersea empires and meddle in the blood war. Even Sekala, the demon shark and patron of the Sahuagin, swims the waters of Stygia in the Nine Hells, an uncaring force of brutality so fearsome that devils avoid him. And this is a bit I love. His followers perform bloody rites with captive devils as sacrifices. Wow. Ancient aboleths of the abolithic sovereignty, supremely intelligent and often aligned with both Demogorgon and Ethan, enslave lesser beings to serve as their limbs on land. Together, these patrons demand sacrifices cast into dark waters and dredge secrets from sunken cities that should have stayed buried. Speaking of ruin, death itself can be bargained with. Undead warlocks form pacts with ancient sentient entities that have bypassed the natural cycle of life and death through horrific rituals, divine favour, or cosmic anomaly. These patrons typically command the negative energy plane or shadowed demiplanes like Ravenloft, offering their warlocks power that mirrors their own necrotic and stagnant nature. The bond is one of shared hunger for immortality and dominion over the grave, turning the mortal into a conduit for entropy and the walking dead. Prominent among these, of course, is Orcus, the Prince of the Undead, who rules from the city of Naratir in the Abyss. Although he despises the undead as mere tools for his eternal vendettas, believe it or not, he is worshipped as a god more frequently than other demon princes. His warlocks, often known as skulls or skull lords, spread misery and revenge across the world as extensions of his spiteful will. Then there's Vecna, the maimed one, an archlich who clawed his way to godhood through secrets and intrigue. He draws warlocks who seek to replicate his ascension or recover his lost artifacts, the hand and eye of Vecna, for their own dark ambitions. Acererak, the Devourer, the famous demi-lich, anchors his influence to the Shrine of Acererak, a great skull statue on the second layer of Pandemonium. Those who recharge their bond by kissing the idol can move among mindless undead unnoticed, and eventually command them to defend their new master or turn against their former ones. Acererak exists to trap souls and test adventurers in his elaborate, lethal tombs, harvesting their life essence as they die for his endless schemes. Vlaakith, the 157th, the Lich Queen of the Githyanki, rules with iron paranoia from her obsidian palace of Sassuris in Tunarat on the astral plane. She wields the crown of corruption to drain energy and command undead, along with the scepter of Ephalamon that seals draconic pacts. Her warlocks gain powers reminiscent of evil paladins, commanding undead and channeling militaristic might, though they must always beware of her hunger for life essence should they grow too powerful. Yeah, she harvests them. Cass, the bloody-handed, once Vecna's treacherous lieutenant, this is the guy who had that sword, now exists as a vampire tyrant whose very name evokes rebellion. Warlocks who serve him often inherit a drive to betray greater powers, wielding echoes of the infamous sword of Cass. Dragotha, the ancient Dracolich, offers warlocks breath-like weapon necrotic blasts and command over spectral dragonkin, embodying the cult of the dragon's prophecy that dead dragons shall one day rule the world. In the domains of dread, Anthopot, the ancient pharaoh who one of the first ancient undead, grants warlocks a paralyzing fear aura and the weight of eternal kinship from his vast tomb in Har-Akir. Aslan Rex, the calculating Lich King and Dark Lord of Darkon, binds his servants through paranoia and lingering obsession with mortal trappings, commissioning grand works even in undeath. Kargoth, the Betrayer, the first Death Knight, serves Demogorgon with baleful green skeletal fury, offering warlocks rituals of transformation into deathly knights the old-fashioned way. Then there's Zas Tam, the Zolkir of necromancy and secret ruler of Thay. Yep, he can be a warlock patron too. Trades artifacts and commands vast armies of the dead through vampire generals, using his warlocks as pieces in his grand necromantic strategies. Even more remote powers answer the call. Evening Glory, as I mentioned, the eternal lover and neutral goddess of immortal beauty. She's a dead patron. Teaches that love alone can defy death. And the legendary Netherese liches, such as Larlock, who rules Warlock's Crypt, and Arm4, the Undying as well. They're both suitable for that pact. Cosmic horrors like the Atropos, Worldborn Dead, he's also in that list. The abilities granted by an undead pact are steeped in necrotic power. Warlocks gain necrotic resilience, resisting energy drain and life-draining magic. Many manifest the pallor of death, the aura of fear akin to a lich's, or physically transform, resembling the undead, terrifying the living. They learn to summon and command ghouls, shadows, and wights, or compel the dead to serve as pawns. As they advance, their ascendance overtakes them and they require the Lich template or shift towards outsider status, becoming immune to poison, sleep, and mind-affecting the spell effects. So there's a lot of overlap with the Undying template. Some even adopt undead grafts, replacing living limbs with skeletal or preserved flesh. Blech. The goals of these pacts vary with the patron's obsession. Many warlocks pursue personal sovereignty, seeking eternal undeath to continue research or rule for centuries without the distraction of mortality. Servants of Atropos or similar elder evils chase cosmic finality, viewing the annihilations of all things as a sweet release from their torment. Others become collectors of material traps, obsessively recovering stolen grave goods or guarding ancient tombs like the mummies they emulate. Some become entropomancers, serving gods of insensate destruction in hopes of mastering the great nothingness of the eternal entropic planes. Serving the undead imposes a profound psychological burden. I can't stress this enough. The undead mind is changeless and inflexible, so a warlock may find their goals hardening into obsessions that persist for centuries without any evolution. Joy drains away, leaving them shackled to the memory of their own inequalities and misdeeds. Many develop inescapable cravings for blood, flesh, or life force, mirroring their patron's hunger. Ultimately, the trap of immortality weighs heavy on their mind. The years stretch into an unchanging eternity that breeds a deep, stagnant madness, a perfect reflection of the grave they have chosen to inhabit. For those who walk this path, power over death comes at the cost of truly living, and they become little more than another echo in their patron's endless court of the damned. So, you tell me, what does actually define a warlock and not just a cultist? I'm still on the fence on that problem. Thank you to my hero supporters on Fourthwall for the request to cover this topic. It was an epic dive into about 40 different sourcebooks, including the Book of Vile Darkness. Always a fun read. I did my best to pack as much information into this video as I could for you to be inspired by. Sorry if there was a little bit of repetition in there. It's not for your player character warlock per se. Then at least you could craft some seriously nasty non-player character villains. The occasional ally who made some really terrible choices and is trying to avoid their certain doom. I'll leave it up to you from here, and hope you found this at all entertaining and interesting. My name is AJ Pickett, your actual working sage for hire, OG lore master of Dungeon Tube, expert on the imaginary. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.
Come closer, my darling adventurers. Feel the pull of shadow and starlight, drawing you deeper into the forgotten tunnels beneath the world. I am waiting for you in the lair of the Sage of Dungeon Tube. You can already smell the ancient tomes, the scent of dragon blood on old parchment, can you not? He knows things, this sage, terrible, beautiful things, secrets that would make even the gods blush. And tonight, he is sharing them with you. Step into my lair, sweet wanderers. Feel the silk of a death-capped mushroom hoodie sliding over your skin like a lover's caress. Wrap yourself in the embrace of his dread jester shirt and let the madness whisper sweet nothings in your ear. Drink from his enchanted mugs while you lose yourself in forbidden lore. For just a few gold coins, or the modern equivalent you call dollars, you may claim his digital grimoires, the super atomic role-playing game, forbidden secrets of the mind flayer time war, Shadowfell itself, dripping with delicious darkness, and the music, oh, his metal album Necrotheosis will rattle the very bones in your chest. But the true treasure is becoming one of his chosen. For a mere pittance per month, you gain entrance to the inner sanctum. Exclusive visions, early rites, audio scrolls read by the sage himself in that deliciously deep voice. You will never adventure alone again, so come. Leave the safe taverns behind, descend the fourth wall and offer yourself to the sage freely and of your own volition. He has been waiting for you. I have been waiting for you. Don't make us hungry.